This week on A to Z Running, in a recent conversation with other runners, we fell to discussing the challenges of digging deep or pushing harder or hurting a little more. And given the close connection to our recent discussion about mindset and the mind-body connection, we dive deeper into pain, both what it is and what we can do as runners to overcome it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Andy.
And I'm Zach. Is it possible to get a World Marathon Majors star without running a marathon? Yes.
Oh.
Actually.
Huh.
And it's a bit distressing. More on that later. We'll talk about that soon. There's your teaser for the episode. Yeah. Before we do, we thought we ought to share a little bit about our recent race experience. We were down in Indianapolis. I say down, but depending on where people are listening to this, it could be up, down, over, whatever. We were in Indianapolis for the Monumental Marathon Half Marathon weekend. It was a very exciting weekend. It was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. It was probably the best possible weather for distance running that you can ever have. It's like 43 degrees and absolutely no wind and no rain or any precipitation at all. It was as good as it gets. It was so good.
And it wasn't too bad as a spectator.
No,
I had fun and actually overdressed for spectating.
You had
Not a bad problem.
7 jackets on.
No, I didn't.
When Andy was taking off her layers, it took 10 minutes to get all of the jackets off.
That's not true. That's not true.
Because
I did bring a lot of layers, but then for the actual race, I didn't wear all of them.
Well, you had so many jackets on, you needed help taking them off. So that counts for something. All right, so here's how the weekend went. I was running the half marathon. We had a couple of A to Z runners in marathons, including a marathon debut. We'll tell you all about that here soon. And Andy was coming to support and spectate. Yeah. She was being a champ for the weekend.
I enjoy spectating, so it was very thrilling.
It was. Andy was the person cheering for everyone by name because the elites all had their first names on their bibs. And so she made sure to cheer for every single runner who passed that she could see their name. And it was...
until I started feeling it in my voice and I had to sing the next day. And I was like, I think I'm going to still cheer, but maybe not scream.
That was one of those where I may have forgotten to tell her that there were apparently 250 elites in these races between the half and the full marathon, men's and women's. It was quite the thing. We'll tell you about that in a moment. But first, we have to tell you about how the whole thing started because it was the craziest timing of anything at all.
What do you mean?
When we got there, the day before the race.
Oh, yeah.
So we had to do some things work-wise in the morning, and it's a Saturday morning race, and so Friday we still had work, and so we couldn't leave until about noon or so on Friday, and I had to be at a meeting. So I was running the half marathon in the elite field, and they want you to attend the pre-race meeting the night before, partly because they give you all the information, but that's also where they have your race packet. So you gotta be there anyway. And not just to pick up your packet, but you have to get the elites had these wristbands, and you couldn't get into the elite areas without the wristband. They wouldn't even let coaches and spouses in. So Andy, unfortunately, had to fend for herself in the morning before the race. But so you can't go the morning of. You have to go the day before to pick that stuff up. And so we knew that it was going to be pretty tight time. And, we're doing the whole thing where it's what does Google Maps say your ETA is while you're driving? And it was getting close, but then it was well, if we drive a little faster, we'll gain some time back. So how much
Don't
speeding?
Admit that. No.
I didn't say we did. I'm just saying how much speeding
Also, do we
can
actually
you do?
need that gas for the car? And the answer was yes, we do need more gas.
Yeah, did we have to stop at a gas station? But it was the fastest gas station bathroom break stop on the planet.
It was really good.
3 minutes in and out with gas.
And washing our hands.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happens is we're supposed to be there at 5:30 for this meeting, and we got to town 5:10. It wasn't bad. Our timing was pretty great. However, we did not account well for the fact that it was 5 p.m. in a big city. Indianapolis isn't a huge city, but it's sizable. But the more important thing is it's 5 p.m. in a city where there's a race with 20,000 people, and you have to everyone has to pick up their packets. And so when would they do that? After work on a Friday, right? And so we were not the only people at 5:10 trying to get into the Indianapolis Convention Center, which meant we were trying to get in the parking garage across the street from the Indianapolis Convention Center, as well as all other 10,000 people who showed up at that exact moment in time.
Spoiler, it didn't happen. We didn't get to the parking garage.
Well, no, but what was better was what did happen. So we get in line, and this line of cars is going like multiple blocks around all these different places, and we could tell that that's where they're headed. And so we got in the line and realized very quickly that we were not going to make it to this parking garage if we were in this line. And so instead of trying to figure something else out, I just said, okay, Andy, I'm just going to jump out because I'm 2 blocks away from the convention center. I can just walk over there way faster than we were moving. We weren't actually moving at all. And so I jumped out, I didn't actually grab anything. I just jumped out and walked into the convention center and walked in 3 minutes before the start of the meeting, which was exactly the amount of time I needed to grab my packet with my bib and everything and go sit down and listen to Matt give instructions about the day of the race and what to expect and everything. It was very important that I was there because I would not have figured any of the stuff out that I was supposed to know race morning. Like there was a certain building we had to get to where where the elite hospitality area is, but it's a huge building and there's only one door that we could actually get into. And lo and behold, even after the meeting, I still couldn't find that door right away, race morning. But we had to go. We had to go to the meeting. We got the information. I made it. And then as I'm walking out of the meeting, I call Andy, and she's like, I am still on this line waiting, but I'm getting close. And I look up, and I see her in front of the intersection right there. And so I just run across the intersection, jump in the car. She does a U-turn, and we drive away. It was perfect.
We didn't even have to pay for parking.
Didn't even have to pay for parking. Andy, of course,
in traffic the whole time,
was not terribly enjoying herself.
No, it was fine. It was fine, except I had to go to the bathroom. That was the only thing. Right. But whatever, it could be worse.
Yeah, and so then we got off to a great start. At that point, didn't miss anything.
He feels so validated in like the timing of things. He's like, I made it. And I'm like, 3 minutes.
I was perfect. But you don't want to be there 15 minutes early.
Yes,
There's
you do when you're coming from Grand
I actually
Rapids.
did want to be there earlier because I wanted to go through the expo. I had a particular apparel item that I have been hunting for quite some time and have not been able to find a good one. And so I was hoping to kind of glance around the expo and see if any running stores had. But anyway,
people want to hear about the race though.
So here's what happens. Race morning. All right. In Indianapolis, this is the monumental marathon and half marathon. I was running in the half marathon. They tell us in the meeting before there's 250 elites across the men and women half marathon and marathon. And so it's roughly like 70 to 80 elites in each of the races, which is crazy. Wait, that's not right math. Not 70 to 80. Sorry, like 60 elites in each of the races, which is crazy. Races this size don't have elite fields that big. But Matt, who was the elite coordinator, did a spectacular job of bringing people in, and they just did a great job of taking good care of us. So race morning, we've got this room that is inside a building. It's not like a tent. It's inside a building that is the hospitality area for the elites. We go to that room and we can put all our stuff down. You can leave it there the whole day because they'll be there monitoring it the whole time. So we don't have to worry about where to put our stuff. I could wear all of my warm clothes in, and then in that area, then they have a separate building where they have an indoor warm-up area in the convention center.
So
like
fancy.
One of the big convention halls is just an empty hall, and we could actually like run and do drills and everything indoors. Apparently Monumental has a history of bad weather, so indoors we can do all the warm-ups. And so then they're like, but we will walk you to the place, and so at a certain time we'll all head over together. And in case you're not with the group when we're walking over, we have these people stationed in various positions along the route you need to walk that hold a sign that says elite on it. Just look for the people holding the elite sign. I was like, how well organized is this? This is so cool. Of course, I did not want to walk across with all the people. Actually, when I got into the hospitality area, they had 2 rooms. They're giant conference rooms. They had 2 of them. One was where all the athletes were, and the other one was empty, but it was open. And I was like, well, why would I go in a room full of people when I could go in an empty room and do my own thing? And so I went in that room by myself and did all my like stretches and my some of the pre-race stuff. And then when everyone was walking over, I was like, I don't want to walk over right now. I want to go jog. And so I went for a jog and eventually found the convention hall room that I needed to be in. And so you can bring your stuff into that room too, but it has to be in that clear bag. And then they have a spot where you can leave that stuff and they'll bring it back to the hospitality room for you. So at the end of the race, you can just show up in the hospitality room and all your stuff is there. Like, how good. They did such a good job. So cut it all short and do all the warm-ups. Do all the warm-ups. And we walk out of the convention hall. They do this thing. They do it every time I've done a race where I've been a part of an elite field. It's like you have to be at doing certain things at certain times, and they are adamant. And so, like, the start of the race is the same for the half and the full. And so 250 elites all need to get to that start at the same time. And they're just yelling, like, it's time to go to the start. Let's go, let's go. And they're like yelling and yelling. And most of the people in the room just ignore them completely. It's so funny. It happens every time. But you know why? They're doing it because they do want to try to get people to the start, even though it doesn't really matter if everyone goes to the start at that moment in time. If everyone doesn't and they're all just hanging out, then they have a problem.
Right.
And so they're not going to delay the start of the race for these elites. And so they really don't want you waiting too long. But then we get out there, and sure enough, most people just waited until the last minute to go out. And we get out there, and everyone's doing like stride outs and everything. And you hear someone yelling, "Final stride out!" And no one listens to them. They all ignore them, and they're all doing.
Even though they did such a good job organizing,
it was great.
No one was going to listen to them.
No, but that's just how it goes. That's just part of the process. And so the start line's there. We're all running back and forth in front of the start line, and then the national anthem plays. And so then that stops everyone, and then they bring us over. And we line up, and it's like, it's like 3 minutes. I line up, and no, it was about 5 minutes. And before the gun goes off, which is great. So you don't have to stand there for 20 minutes in the cold. It wasn't cold
People
for
racing.
People are
going to hate you, like talking like this, because they just ran a big marathon and they had to wait for like an hour.
Some of you listening ran Monumental, and you did have to stand there in the cold for 20 minutes. I'm sorry. That is the way it normally is, yes, for most of us. But this is all to say how great of a job they did putting this race together for these elites. And so then, it's line up, and I never like to line up right in the front because I never start as quickly as other people do. And so like they just end up shoving me. And so I line up like 3 people deep, and sure enough, the gun goes off, and the guy on my left immediately steps in front of me and just trips me. Like he doesn't go straight. He goes diagonally to the right. I'm like, seriously, man, there's nothing for you to do right. It's the start of the race. It doesn't matter. But no, he had to like step on my foot and go across the front of me. But aside from that, the race goes off, and 2 things that you need to know before I tell you what happened. The first is...
Only 2?
Yeah. The first is I was running this race for a very particular reason. Getting ready for the marathon project on December 21, where I'm going to attempt to run as fast a marathon as I feel like I possibly can. And I don't know exactly what that means, but go out and try to perform as well as I can. And this half marathon was kind of like a trial run of that approach. And also talking to Q is my coach, talking to Q ahead of time. And he's like, so what's your strategy here? And I told him, I was like, I think I just want to try to compete. Like, I don't really want to worry about anything else. I know the race is going to be fast. I know there's going to be a lot of guys in the front of the race who are going to be running fast. I want to just see if I can compete with them. Like, maybe I can finish in the top 3 or 5 in this race. And so that was the goal. When the race goes off, that means I needed to be attentive to what other people were doing so I could kind of get a sense of where the race was starting to unfold. And so those are the 2 things. So the gun goes off, or whatever they do to start races these days, and everybody takes off, which is normal, the start of the race. I sit back a little bit and then just kind of start easing into this group that starts to form. And right away, I can tell you that there's a lot of people in the front of this race, and they're running pretty fast. And I was like, okay, it'll thin out here soon, but wow, that's a lot of people. And, you always feel there's like the excitement of the start of the race. And so you always run faster than you think you're running. Except except for this time. I could tell I was running really fast, and it right away was like, this is not easy. This is not comfortable. I have 13 miles to run, and this does not feel easy. But I needed to kind of just relax a little bit and feel things out for a while. So 5K into the race, we come across 5K in something like 15 minutes. And there's 20 guys.
Oh, no.
20 guys running. So 15-minute 5K is like 103.30 pace for a half marathon. And I was expecting 5 to 10 guys in this race capable of running 103 mid. And there's 20 guys in this pack forming. And I start to think right away, this is going to be a slog. Like there are fast people here, and there's a lot of them. And let's find out if I have what it takes. So 5K in, 20 guys. Still thinking it's got to thin out here. 10K in, there's still 15 guys. And we did not slow down at all. So we're running still that 103 mid pace. Now you have to understand, I didn't know any of this at the time. I looked at all these numbers after the fact. I never once looked at my watch until late in the race. I'll tell you why in a little bit. And so I don't know how fast we're running, but I know we're running fast because I felt like I was running as hard as I could at 3 miles into the race. And so here I am in this half marathon thinking I guess I'll come back to that. And so we're pushing hard, and it's just this chunk of guys all running together. And my whole approach here is just keep up. Just do what I can to keep up. And it was like mental discipline, because what kept happening was the pace was never just like a straight rigid thing, right? And so the group will start to kind of fade a little bit, and I'd find myself kind of floating toward the front of the group and being right at the front, like leading the group for a little bit, and then the pace would start to pick up, and I'm not paying that close attention, and suddenly I'm at the back of the group, and it's like I have to make a choice here. Because if I don't push a little bit right now, the group's just going to run away from me. And that was happening constantly throughout the race. I've never run a race where I had to be that resilient that many times, that often, just to stay with the race. I've done races where I could have potentially tried to be more resilient, but just didn't and faded back. But in this one in particular, just, time after time, telling myself, get back with them. Get right up there, or they're surging a little bit, surge with them. Got to stay with it. It was very difficult. So that is happening for the first 8 miles or so. And there is a guy who, by the way, who took off just kind of solo. No one went with him. And then a second guy eventually took off to try to chase him down, and no one went with him either. And so I was just staying with the pack. It's the mindset is always the pack will catch him. The pack always catches him. Well, in this case, the pack did catch one of the guys, but not the other. He won the race, and he stayed in front the whole time. But he didn't win by a lot, by the way. He only won by like 14 seconds. So at one point, at mile 8, things started to kind of feel like I'm in a manageable rhythm here at this point. And then suddenly, one of the guys in the pack kind of like takes off a little bit. But instead of like just going and trying to chase down those other guys who are ahead of us, he looks back at the pack and he starts waving us up like, come on, guys, let's go. And I'm sitting here thinking, no, don't do it. Everyone ignore him. Don't do it. But they didn't. They didn't ignore him. They obeyed. And it's one of those crazy things that happens sometimes in races like this, where this guy's like, he knows that if he wants to chase these guys down, he's going to have a better job of it if the whole group is doing it. And so he just like force of will coerces a pack of 10 other guys to change their plan in that moment. And then they did. They respond. So the pack picks it up and goes up with him. And I'm at the back of the pack at this point. I'm starting to kind of lose contact a little bit. Me and one other guy who happens to be a runner in the area here where we live. And so I also kind of knew him. And so Tanner and I are both kind of fading off a little bit. And I look at that and I'm like, it's too soon. I cannot run the next 4.5 miles by myself and still think that I'm going to put together the best possible race. So I turn to Tanner and I'm like, that's where the race is. We got to go. And so both of us pick it back up. We reattach to the group, and it was abundantly clear that was a temporary arrangement. And it's just a question of how long. So mile 8, mile 9, back of the group again, but not losing contact quite yet, kind of surging again a little bit here and there. But right around mile 10, started to lose contact with the group, right? And I come through 10 miles faster than I've ever run 10 miles before, and think to myself, and I came through 10K faster than I'd ever run 10K on a road before as well. And so I'm sitting here thinking to myself, have I done as much as I could do? Like, is that all all I could ask of myself at this point? And now it's just kind of hang on as best as I can through the end of the race. There's 3 of us that kind of trickled off the back of that group. And after mile 10, I'm thinking, okay, that was my struggle mile. Mile 11 or so rolls around, and I realize that there's only 2 miles left, and it's got to be possible that there's more that I could give. Like, there's no way I've given everything yet. And I'm seeing the guy next to me checking his watch quite a bit. And I was like, there's only one well, there's two. There's 2 reasons someone does that. One is because they're feeling so badly that it's like they just can't, it's a reflex. Like, when is this going to be done? When is this going to be done? It's like that kind of thing. Or the second reason, which felt more likely in this scenario, is we were close to a kind of benchmark time, and he's checking his watch to try to figure out exactly how much faster we have to run to get that time. And I knew, not because I hadn't looked at my watch except for at mile 10, and so I hadn't tried to do any math about what pace we're running, but I knew, based on this group and what was going on here, that if that's the case, then he's trying to figure out if we can still run under 104 for the half. And as soon as that thought occurred to me, I was like, if we are really that close, I am not losing a benchmark time like that by like 3 seconds. I am not going to do that. And so mile 11, I start pushing. And I dropped that guy. I didn't drop him hard. Like, he just kind of faded away. He stayed close, but he kind of faded away. And I started looking ahead, and I started asking myself, how much more can I give before the end of this race? And how long can I do it? And so I start pushing, start picking it up a little bit, and I see that I'm starting to gain on some other guys. And so from that point on, it was just, can I do a little more? Can I do a little more? So I get through mile 11, mile 12, hit mile 12, so I've got 1 mile to go. And it's like, okay, 1 mile, you can hurt for 1 mile. It's not that long. And so then the pressure's on. Half a mile to go, pressure's on even more. And by that point, you can kind of see the finish a couple turns away. And so just driving as hard as I could to the line. And I ended up doing it. Ran 103.46. I was 8th in the race, which is the worst finish that I've ever had while feeling like I ran that fast. So that was interesting. But that just speaks to how competitive.
Yeah. So good.
So
that was really exciting. I was at mile 12 near the end, and I was excited for you because I could tell you're running strong.
I was hurting. I was hurting something awful, but hurting in the good way. So the thought inspired as we were discussing this race after the fact, and kind of Andy and I debriefing a little bit, and as I was reflecting on some recent conversations with other runners, the thought occurs to me that how we think about discomfort and pain and what we do in terms of training and mindset and everything with that is very important as runners. And so I thought we should spend a little bit of time to talk about it. So that is what we're going to talk about next. Pain is not fun. How obvious of a statement can we make right now? We were talking about mindset last week. If you missed that episode, definitely go back and listen to it. And the mind-body connection. And a very important part of that reflection is this concept of pain and discomfort and the reality of pushing the body to the limit. So we just shared our experience in the Monumental Half Marathon and some of the reflection around how much can a person hurt, how much can I hurt when I am doing this thing of running, and how do I even know? Like, where are the limits? Mm-hmm. And what's the right amount of hurt that I can endure and still be successful? And like these kinds of questions, these are important questions as runners, because that's kind of the recipe for success, is balancing. And this goes back to, we talked a little bit about it last week, but it was Steve Magnus's research And when he talks about hazard score, which is the combination of how important something is and how much is left and how bad it's feeling. And so you can get a kind of high hazard score when something's not very important, there's a lot left and it feels bad, or some combination of those things, right? And it's actually a predictor on whether someone maintains an exertion or doesn't. So when the hazard score is low, people tend to perform better. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not hurting, but it might mean that the importance is very high. So the runner who's running for a gold medal will suffer a great deal more willingly than someone who's running for last place in the Olympics. There's like the two different people in those situations, right? For example. So in order to break this down a little bit, we wanted to talk through pain and understanding pain, and then some actionable considerations.
I want to back up, though, because sometimes the hazard score, though, there's so many considerations. Because the person who's finishing last, also, if it's like a race, for instance, where they have a sweeper, because our friend Liz, who's been on the show before, by the way, there is a high motivation for staying ahead of the sweeper vehicle.
Yeah, so I was talking specifically about like an Olympic race, the first and last. But you're right.
There's high motivation because you can't finish. You can't finish unless you keep going. And that's a high amount of desire for completion, the risk, I guess, or the feeling of, I guess, importance of continuing to press is higher.
Well, and that's a great example because as Liz will tell us, and the reason Liz came to mind is because we ran into her on the street corner in Indianapolis.
And she was working as the sweeper pacer, which she loves to do. You may have heard her mention it because we talked about it on the show. But she tries to encourage those who might get picked up by the sweeper vehicle and trying to keep as many people in the race as possible.
Yeah, and what she says is that part of why, like we talk about the importance factor, part of why it tends to be particularly high for those runners that she's trying to help along is because a lot of times they're trying to do something for the first time. They're trying to do something they've never done before, and it's kind of like a proving to myself, can I do this? And so you apply that kind of logic to any runner anywhere in the race, and those are things that are going to raise that importance, the sense of importance in a thing we do. I'm trying to do something I've never done before, so it's more important than just a routine experience. Or I'm trying to prove to myself and others, or to myself, that I can do this. Is it even possible for me to do this? And so, layer some of that stuff in there. This race for me, this half marathon, was definitely an element of trying to prove, can I do this? And part of the importance of this race was actually the confidence it could give me for the next race, which is, I would argue, significantly higher importance for me personally, the marathon I'm running later on. But this half was almost kind of like if I can do it in this, I think I am even more confident that I can do it in that also. And so there was a sense of like, I need to be willing to suffer, because if I'm not willing to suffer here, who's to say I'd be willing to suffer there, in some of those senses. Yeah.
You can suffer a lot in a half marathon, by the way. I feel like that is one of the races. It has eluded me in execution because of that factor. You can push way harder in a half marathon than you can in a marathon. And it's so long that you have to continually be focused to press. It's just a very hard combination of things.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about athletes at different levels of competitiveness. And so when you look at the professional runners and things like guys running 60 minutes and under in a half marathon, women running 105, 106 in a half marathon, things like that, the degree of exertion relative to their maximum possible exertion, like VO2 max type of stuff, they can run at a much higher percent of that maximum than a runner, for instance, who's running 2 hours in a half marathon, because of the physiological difference between the higher fitness level of one versus another. And so part of that too is like depending on the race, depending on what I'm doing in preparation and certain kinds of things, like there's a certain distance for every runner that's like just complete suffering for the whole distance if you're doing it to your maximum possible capacity.
That's why a lot of runners say they hate 5Ks.
Yeah,
like
it's
distance
asking
runners.
A lot.
Distance runners will say often that they hate 5Ks because it's just a sufferfest.
It's suffering the whole time. So like what we mean by this is we're saying that there's no point in time where you're comfortable in that race. If you're doing it to your maximum possible potential. Not to say that you can't
sometimes
train
you feel
yourself.
pretty clippy for the first mile and a half. And
Yeah, so that's part of our topic, actually. We're going to talk a little bit about that here. So let's start by defining pain, because we're talking about pain here. I think it's relevant to, Andy's like,
it's important.
Everybody knows what pain is.
No, there's different kinds of pain.
There's different kinds, but also it's important to understand what is happening in our bodies when we talk about pain. So we turn to a 2022 review article on the physiology of pain. This is a review of studies around the topic, as well as the general literature on the concept. So pain, the title, Physiology of Pain, a narrative review on the pain pathway and its application in the pain management. Okay, very interesting. So starting with a few classifications, there's essentially a couple different classifications of types of pain. So you have acute versus chronic. Acute pain is like provoked by tissue damage and serves as a warning sign of an ongoing noxious process. That's a word that they keep using in this study. This is a quote, by the way, such as medical condition or injury. So acute pain is an immediate provocation. And they use this word noxious. We're going to come back to that a couple times. Chronic pain, then, is defined as pain that persists or recurs for longer than essentially the period of time normally expected for healing and recovery. So acute pain has a time limit where it should heal or recover by a certain point in time. And if it doesn't, then it becomes chronic. And so that's important, those distinctions. It's not the same thing when you talk about like, a kind of a muscle that's sore for months on end. That hamstring that's been bugging me all the time is not the same thing as I finished a run and suddenly my hamstring was bothering me.
Like you can't walk because you
sure.
tore it.
Chronic pain could be that severe also, but yeah. Acute would be like, that certainly. We'll talk a little bit more about that type though. So then you have physiological versus pathological. And this is important. Physiological pain occurs in the absence of actual tissue or nerve damage. So it's like the warning sign for impending injury. So physiological pain has more to do with the neurological side of the pain experience. And so this might be like muscle cramping and some of those types of things. Also could be like psychosomatic pain, which is to suggest that there's not something specifically damaged, but my body is telling me that I'm doing something that could damage me. And so I'm feeling badly in some sense. And then you have pathological, which is the actual like tissue or nerve damage. Something is harmed. And then the final category here is somatic versus visceral. So somatic pain is like joints, muscle, skin. It's localized. It's exterior predominantly. And visceral pain is like internal, like organs. It's not very localized. You can't like say it hurts in this spot. It's more like an area. And there's a lot going on with that. So oftentimes it's like it includes things like something hurts, but then something near it also hurts. And who knows if it's hurting because it's like a physiological. Well, there can be that too. Yes, they talk about that. So you have that categorization as well. And if you're a runner and you're hearing us describe all these things, you can start thinking of examples of each of these every time we say it. Okay, so essentially, noxious stimuli are introduced. This is what it means, what pain means, right? Pain means noxious stimuli are introduced, and the nociceptors, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but these are part of the nerve system. The nociceptors activate and trigger then three types of responses: an inflammatory response, and a neurological or neural response, and an endocrine response, which is when you get the hormones starting to react. And so because of that, we end up with a bunch of undesirable looping effects. So the inflammatory response activates as a result of the nociceptors detecting noxious stimuli. And then when the inflammatory response stimulates, more nociceptors detect noxious stimuli from the inflammatory response. And so it becomes this kind of like looping. So that's what pain is, right? At a basic scientific level, pain is just something introduced to our nervous system that our nervous system sees as bad and then does some kind of thing in response to it.
To protect us, usually.
Yeah. Yep. To protect or heal or both. And yeah. And depends on the things above, remember. So like the physiological pain is a noxious stimuli, something that your body is saying this is probably going to harm you, but nothing's damaged yet necessarily, but your body will still have that same type of response. So like, for instance, we've talked about this, but stress that is not directly harming the body can still cause the same kind of response your body would have as someone hitting you with a hammer. The same type of response. It's just not as localized. Okay, so that's our definition of pain that we're going to operate under. Because then what we get to is this next part, and this is really important, a contextualizing reflection. Studies repeatedly show, like all of them, that pain is subjective in two distinct and important ways. Pain is subjective. One way is person to person. You take two different people and you put them in a tub of ice water, that's at 40 degrees, and they will experience that pain differently. All right. So they've done studies like, for instance, take elite athletes. They took runners, cross-country skiers, and soccer players, all elite, and then they took regular people, athletes, and they subjected them to a number of different unpleasant things. And guess what? Guess who reported it as less severe than others? Cross-country skiers and runners felt that the painful things were less severe than soccer players and people who weren't elite athletes.
Did that make you feel superior to
well,
soccer players?
It's not surprising to us, right? Well, we are superior to soccer players, but I'm joking, kind of.
Just joking.
But not only that. So they reported the pain as less severe, and they were willing to tolerate it more and longer. Okay, so person to person. This is simply to illustrate the point that different people experience the same noxious stimuli differently. Mm-hmm. So pain is subjective, person to person. Second category, pain is subjective based on context for the same person. So studies have found many different examples that prove this. You can increase someone's pain tolerance by teaching them certain kinds of emotional or cognitive strategies, psychological strategies. So you take an experience and it's very unpleasant for someone, and then you teach them a few of these strategies, have them rehearse them for some amount of time, and then introduce them to that same painful experience, and they report it as a lower degree of pain, or they tolerate it better, or something like that. You can also you can change people's tolerance of pain and perception of degree of pain, both of those things. Same person, by making some kind of difference. And one of the simple ways that they have identified this is simple kinds of mood or affect considerations. If someone's happier, then pain tends to be perceived as less. If someone
That's why they say to smile. That's why
if someone is less happy, right?
Also because I love running, but
remember
I'm in a lot of pain when I'm smiling usually.
Remember the study with the cyclists? All they did was show them pictures of smiling faces or frowning faces. And the people seeing frowning faces, or when a person was seeing frowning faces, they were not able to produce as high of a time trial result. And that same person, when they were seeing smiling faces, rode harder for longer. What does that tell us? It tells us that pain is subjective. And it tells us that certain kinds of things can change how we experience pain, at least to some degree. It is not infinite. There's a limit here, because like if you chop off someone's arm, it's probably going to hurt no matter what.
Or if you tear your hamstring, it's probably going to hurt.
Yes, but whether we call a thing painful and how badly we perceive it can be altered, can be affected. In other words, is malleable. So the question simply becomes, how can we do that? How can we do that better? So a lot of negative connotations with pain, but we could also replace it with the word discomfort. If the idea of pain sounds like it's too immutable.
Also, I think that it's important to put it in context of what we're discussing right now, because as I mentioned before, pain is a good thing that we experience to keep our body from harm.
When it's pathological, right.
So there are important times that we listen to pain and we make different decisions regarding it, what we're doing. So I think that's good to put it in the context of running. So calling it discomfort for running is a good idea, because we can then gain some actionable things from this information for running.
Yeah, and keep in mind those categories we shared earlier. The reason we started with that is because it's helpful to remember. So if I have a pathological pain, like something is damaged, running harder in that moment in time is probably not a good idea. Probably not a good idea. If I have acute pathological pain, so now I'm going to combine some of these, right? Acute pathological somatic pain, right, which is all three of those categories, one layer of it, means that something is damaged, like a joint, my skin, something is damaged acutely, immediately, and I should not necessarily ignore that. But physiological pain that might be visceral, not as much, or maybe more chronic, or maybe it's still acute, but it's still physiological as opposed to pathological, suggests that I might not necessarily be damaged, but I need to be able to tell that difference, and that's important. And
doctors can do that better than people can.
Actually, the person experiencing is usually the one who can tell the best, because it's not something. So like you could measure it, you could say, yeah, that thing is broken,
right?
If you could see it in an X-ray. But we're talking about, like, can you know, based on the kind of thing that you're feeling, can you know if something is damaged, or if you're feeling something that is like warning signs prior to, some of that kind of stuff. And yeah, there are certain ways we can know certain things. We'll talk about that at some point, but maybe not today. So what we want to try to do here is we want to say, okay, so running hurts. Running is uncomfortable. So that the discomfort word is an important one to layer in. And how can we then endure discomfort to push ourselves to new heights? Like, how can we better endure the discomfort of running to our limits so that we can potentially exceed previous limits? That's one of the pieces of the puzzle. I mentioned some recent conversations earlier. I was chatting with someone and he's like, how can I hurt more? Like, how I get to the end of the race and I'm pushing as hard as I can, and I just feel like there's a limit. Like, I just can't push any harder because it just hurts too much. But like, other people just seem like they're able to hurt more. Like, how can I do that? And that kind of made me think there's some things we can do. 3 in particular. First, finding our limits is important. Knowing where the limits are. And I would say that in terms of as a goal here, we need to do that wisely. It's important. But finding our limits can help. And then expanding our limits by practicing discomfort wisely can help. And then rehearsing strategies that address the side of coping with discomfort can help. And so here's what we'd suggest for any athlete out there who is looking to be successful. We've always said at AtoZrunning that quality training over time is the recipe for success. That's the thing that's going to get you fitter, better, higher performance value, enjoy running more, all the stuff. However, as we often talk about, what we do with our mind can have a significant effect on the results we're looking for. And this is one of those areas that we can do some things very simply here that can give us a bit more of an edge toward our goals. And so these are the 3. Finding our limits as the first goal has a lot to do with just discovering where that limit is and how much can I push before I have reached the limit and I cannot do any more. And it's really challenging to do that because you don't really want to do that in training frequently. And you don't usually have very many opportunities to do that in races. But the most direct way is this mindset of, here's the race, I'm running the race, and the finish line is some distance away, and I make a concerted decision right now, I am going to pick it up and try to push all the way through the finish line. Like, no more slowing down. I'm going to pick it up right now and push all the way through the finish line. And how far away from the finish line can I make that decision and still be able to do it? And that is a really important thing to practice, to try. And for most runners, what it amounts to is you see the finish line and you basically wait until you think, like, I'm close enough where I can do it right now. And the answer is try it a little further back. There's always, so I mentioned in particular in my half marathon, I started asking questions like that, like 2 miles away from the finish. And I wasn't exactly sure. I keep telling myself, what if I started doing that 3 miles before the finish? Could I have caught 2 more guys, like 3 more guys? There were guys not that far in front of me. I think I could have finished in 5th place in that race if I would have at mile 10 had the same mindset as I had at mile 11. But alas.
This is kind of deviating from this specific topic, but I think it's important because it's integrated in this current thought, which is that sometimes what you need is not necessarily to dig deeper with 3 miles to go, because you're automatically kind of doing that. It's like the effort is increasing, but it's how can I run better right now so that I am running faster? Because it's a weird mental thing, but it also physiologically makes it more achievable, giving yourself a productive thought. Like, I'm gonna start lifting up my heels. I've been kind of dragging here. I'm gonna start lifting my heels, and that's the thought. Not like okay, now I'm just gonna grind. Although you are, but giving yourself a productive thought in tandem of how can I run faster without trying harder, which is something we've talked about necessarily. So you want to improve some of those form things or just start becoming more poppy as you're running.
Very true. However, we're talking specifically about the suffering side of it.
Yeah, but I just thought it would work to bring that up in tandem.
Right.
Because if you think suffer fest, how much more can I suffer? That could be a productive thought for you. But perhaps paired with something, it would help you dig deeper, help you get further into that pain cave to have a productive direction for yourself.
Yeah, so always do what Andy's saying, because that will always be better. But specifically for our purposes right now, what you need to be able to find your suffering limits. And remember Magnus's hazard score here. It has everything to do with whether I think I can endure the current discomfort through the duration that I have remaining. That's what helps define that hazard score. And that is mostly a perception thing. And so there is a physical limit somewhere here where your body can't do anymore. Your body can't continue anymore. But as you know, if you've read the material on the topic, our mind will stop us before our body can stop almost every time. There are a few exceptions to that. Humans out there who are incredible specimens and can push their bodies to their literal physical limit past what their neurological limit is trying to be. That is not true for most of us, though. And so the answer is, if you feel like you have given everything, you probably haven't. So how can I find a little more beyond that line? What does it take to do that? And so that's something that we have to rehearse over time, right? And the biggest key to that is being willing to try something that I don't know if I can do it. So there's the layer of, like, I know I can finish this race hard from this point in time, but what if I try a little bit further back and see if I can still from there? That's how you're going to find your limits. You're going to know for sure after you fail. and so we don't want to fail spectacularly. And so this isn't the kind of thing that you do for the first time in a goal race, but using race opportunities. And as a runner, we talk a lot about, like, how can I be successful in my next endeavor? But really, as a runner, it's not about that one race. It's about the whole thing. It's about the whole thing that we're doing. And so if I take a global view of this, I've got plenty of races ahead of me. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to use some of them to help develop some of these things. Second goal then is expanding those limits. And this is where we get practical, because there are certain things we can do in training that help us better endure discomfort without overtaxing ourselves, without ruining ourselves by training too hard or doing, too many all-out efforts, things like that. There are ways we can do it. And so I think there's two in particular, two types of runs that really are designed to allow me to do some of this. One is ways of using fartlek workouts. And so the fartlek workout is just basically an unstructured interval workout by design. You could structure it, but what you try to do with a fartlek workout is you essentially try to figure out how long can I sustain a given effort before my legs have had enough. And so you push just past the line of comfortable, and then you do that repeatedly. And by design, if I'm doing that well, I am able to recover well from it, but I'm also becoming very familiar with the line of how long I can endure a given exertion. And so in order to do that successfully, we have to do multiple different levels of exertion. That's what a fartlek is designed to be. That's why it's unstructured, because you do some shorter things, some longer things, some in the middle, and you just do lots of different things over the course of a fartlek workout. And then the next time you do a fartlek workout, you take into account the experience you had the last time, and you try to do it even better with the same kind of thing. So that's a great way to extend my capacities to endure. And this is why we say don't wear watches for these workouts. Especially do not prescribe paces. Don't go to a track and say, I'm going to run 400s and 800s and things like that, call it a fartlek, and then I'm going to see if I can hit these splits. Don't do that, because you have just killed the complete goal of the workout in this instance. Because now, instead of trying to find your limits, you're just trying to run a pace, which may or may not be your limit. It's almost always not exactly right when you're just running a prescribed pace. And so we need to be a little more flexible than that. The second type is race effort training runs. And these are the ones where you have a degree of exertion and a duration established, like 5K or 6 miles or 4 miles. And the question is, how much effort, how much exertion can I give for this without falling off, without fading off? And so this is great because you can do it many different distances. It doesn't have to be a set thing. You can do it for 4 miles. You can do it for 6 miles. You can do it for 2 miles. And when you're nearing the end of a training cycle, like the last 6 weeks or so, these workouts are great ways to prepare for racing for this reason, because you put yourself in a state of ongoing discomfort, sustained discomfort, and yet you rehearse being able to successfully endure that discomfort for a stretch of time, not just a short interval.
Is part of the reason because you're teaching your mind that it's also safe? So like let's just put the study in there, for instance, and it's uncomfortable, and you're running uncomfortably for an hour plus, and you do that on repeat week after week after week, sometimes more than once in a week. Are you telling your body like this is a safe, hard effort, and does that help decrease the pain?
So you do two things, right? You do two things when you rehearse discomfort. One is your own consciousness, which is what you're talking about, Andy. That does help. But the other is, keep in mind that pain is when your nociceptors tell your body something here is a noxious stimuli and we need to have an appropriate response. But you can subdue that response consciously. And I don't want to go into too many more of these examples, things like people walking on hot coals or spikes or something like that. There's those types of things out there too. It is simply true. So why is it that an endurance runner, like a cross-country skier or a runner, can sit in a 40-degree bath of water and find it tolerable, where someone else sits in that and it's miserable? Why is that? Well, it's because that person has grown more accustomed to discomfort, is more familiar with discomfort. And that's a conscious thing. That's also, it's a neurological thing. And so, yes, I would say yes to your point. And that, I'll give the example. Andy's talking about steady runs. So we do these hour-long steady runs in our training schedules for our runners. We do a lot of them. I do it personally, and we recommend it for our athletes. And so it amounts to, I do about 10-mile runs. It's sometimes I do an hour specifically. Sometimes I just do 10 miles because I have these 10-mile loops. But I do that twice a week, basically, for 8 weeks or more sometimes in a training cycle. Doesn't matter what race I'm preparing for. That's a normal thing that I'll be doing. And in particular, I was reflecting with Andy about how you could say that I was pushing harder for one of those each week for the last several weeks in anticipation of trying to extend my capacity to be uncomfortable at a higher level for a longer period of time. And so I have to be careful because you can damage yourself by overdoing it with any kind of exercise. But a run like this has a range of adaptation potential. So like you could run at the absolute limit as hard as you should for that workout type and gain adaptations, but you can also run a little bit lower exertion and still gain those same adaptations, virtually the same adaptations. And so it's wiser to run a little bit on the lower end of that spectrum because you gain the adaptations and you tend to recover a little bit faster and you tend to risk injury less when you are not pushing that limit. However, I have been deliberately pushing that limit more than I normally would in anticipation for attempting to do that very thing in races this season. So when I'm running this half marathon this past weekend, I was thinking the entire time, this is normal. Like I've been in this situation. The degree of discomfort I was feeling in this race was no different than those 10-mile runs I've been doing once a week for the last 6 weeks. And that helped immensely, I think. That helped. Because what it told me was, on the one side, this is familiar territory. And so I was not terribly concerned about it. I was a little bit unsettled with how uncomfortable it felt at the very beginning of the race even. But I was not terribly unsettled. And also my body was used to that experience. And so it was true that at a physiological level, which is not, no acute damage is happening, but the discomfort at a physiological level, the pain that's physiological, was just kind of more normal.
Can I clarify for our audience, just in case there's people who don't exactly follow what he's saying with efforts? He in training was not running as fast as he was running for his race.
Not even close.
So, right. But I wanted to clarify that in case anyone thought that, oh yeah, for his steady, he was running what he would run in this race.
No, just because that's not how you should train. It's not about running paces. It's about efforts, exertions, and adaptations. So yes, that's when you need to practice discomfort in order to be more accustomed to enduring discomfort. And so this is where it becomes so important. We were talking about earlier, the kind of discomfort matters, because if it's acute and somatic and pathological, that's not something you should be practicing because you're damaging yourself. Like, be careful there, please. But there's something different when it's visceral, when it's more, I can't remember the word, but when it's spread out, it's just like you feel
vague.
Yeah, vague is definitely a good one. Or even physiological. So when it comes down to it, if you're not accustomed to the discomfort, then when the discomfort hits, it has a greater effect on you, negative effect. And so if I want to be able to endure that end of the race when I'm feeling really tired and it's hard, but I want to be able to finish strong, if I want to be capable of that, I have to be familiar with doing that. And the way
that doesn't mean fast finish runs.
No,
that's not what that means.
No, I'm not talking about doing that particularly in training runs. Although that is a way to rehearse it, and so that might be something that I do with races. I use races to over time to practice that kind of discomfort. That is why they have fast finish runs predominantly, because they are a highly inefficient way to achieve adaptations for my body, but they are a way that you can rehearse discomfort in the end of a thing. And so that's one of the reasons people tend to do them so much. And I don't think that's probably the best way to go about it. But okay, so that's the, you're creating in your mind that sense, I'm supposed to hurt right now. That's the goal, and it's a good thing, and I should keep it up.
Yeah.
That's what it is. We could talk about a lot of things too, that like social activity. So why is it that when you are running with other people that it feels better? Well, because it actually feels better. Like literally your body perceives pain at a lower level socially than when you're by yourself in isolation. Crazy, right? That's why races. So here are all the reasons why you run faster in races for the exact same amount of effort. Okay. 1, other people around you socially. And so you actually perceive pain as lower, and you're more willing to tolerate discomfort when you're in a social setting. 2, level of importance is up. When it's race day, full atmosphere, you have a start line, you have a finish line, you have a clock, you have official results. Level of importance is higher, and we know that when level of importance is higher, we can actually tolerate pain more, and pain actually is perceived as lower. And so that's another one. And then 3, well, actually, I'm not quite sure. What there's a whole bunch of them, but off the top of my head, those are the 2 that always stand out the most. So that's true, and that's always going to be the case. So never be surprised when you feel like I can't hardly hit these paces in training, and then in races, it's like, how did that happen? I was able to do it. Just stop trying to hit paces in training. You don't have to worry about it. Okay, so goal number 3, the last one, is rehearsing strategies that teach us at a cognitive level, at a psychological level, how to just be better at enduring discomfort. And there's a lot of them. There are a lot of them. Go look up some of these things. There's just so much stuff. Positive feedback loops, where you create, that's the self-narrative, right? You create the self-narrative in your head. And you can do it in such a way so when you know you're going to hurt, you can anticipate that. And so the anticipation of that allows you to have a strategy in place that as the hurting happens, you can cope with it through that strategy. Things like I just mentioned, I'm supposed to hurt, and that's the goal, and it's a good thing. I should keep it up. And so that's part of like a positive feedback loop that you can generate. Social activity by itself is another kind of strategy. And so, running with other people, especially when it's like people do this a lot for like long runs. How is it that it just feels so much easier to run for hours on end when I'm with a friend? All that kind of stuff. And so we can do that in training certainly too. But there's all these other little things that I can do. I can learn how to exercise control in my mind over the way I respond to discomfort, and increase my ability to tolerate that discomfort when it comes.
Can I share one that I've been sharing a lot this year?
Always.
One of the things when you expect the pain is to also create a strategy for overcoming it, right? That's what this whole section is about, rehearsing strategies. One of the things that you can tell yourself is that, and it's true, that sometimes it does not feel better, it does not alleviate the pain to slow down a little bit. Sometimes what your body needs is just a change. So I always recommend that you first try to change your economy by doing pressing just a little bit harder, actually, when you're in the latter part of your race, when you're towards the end, you're in the last couple miles. Sometimes your body that's saying, no, slow down a little bit and you'll feel better. It's actually, it's true that it would alleviate a little bit, but also pressing in and digging a little bit more might make your body click better. So anyway, that's something that body just needs a change. So that's something that I tell myself in a race when I'm tempted to slow down to alleviate some of the pain, is that it doesn't always do that, and I want to run faster anyway. So might as well do the push.
Right on. Yes, and many more. So we would encourage you to explore those kinds of things as well, strategies for coping with the discomfort, and then turning them into automatic functions because it's just going to. If I'm running, it's going to hurt. It's just going to. And if I don't allow myself to experience that and condition my responses to that appropriately, then it's always going to be more debilitating than it should be.
And for those of you who haven't been with us for very long, and maybe this is your first episode with us, thank you for joining. We do want to mention that we're talking specifically about races and race preparation runs. A lot of the runs that we prescribe and advise are not going to be uncomfortable. So lots of easy running, but I wanted to put it in context of training, because I don't want you to hear, if you're new with us, for you to hear, I need to run and be in pain and face that every day.
Yeah, there's a certain balance you want to strike, and so most of the running should be comfortable efforts. Although you could say a kind of discomfort is duration as well, and so it might not. This is where we get into those different types of pain, right? It might not be any kind of pathological thing, but if you're running for 2.5, 3 hours, those types of things, it's probably going to be pretty uncomfortable, because you're just tired, right? You're just exhausted after a certain point. Like, I kind of want to be done, but I'm not. And I can handle it. It's not too much for me, but I kind of want to be done. And so that's a different layer. Mm-hmm. So in conclusion, we can get better at hurting. And that's because pain is subjective. And so now what we have to do is we have to identify where our limits lie. We have to find ways to extend those limits and do that appropriately in fitting ways. And then we need to rehearse the strategies that allow us to endure better when the discomfort is hitting. And those things all can be conditioned. And that's not to say we'll be successful every time. And that means that I can endure more pain than I ever have before. And now every time I race, it's going to be just that much better. That's not really how it works. But it is something that we can get better at. And so we would encourage you to pursue that yourself. And for now, that's it. But we're ready to get on to some running trivia. And now it's time for everyone's favorite segment of the show, running trivia, where Zach and Andy play against each other with trivia questions assigned by an AI, so there is no bias ahead of time. No one knows what the questions are going to be. And
Except you did make the categories.
Yeah, but we made those kind of together, and it's still a randomized thing. So remember the rules. The topics are randomly selected. We are going to use our cool randomizer thing to do that. You'll get to see what they are. You'll get to find out what they are with us. The AI will ask us multiple choice questions, 3 questions each session, and the first one to 10 points over however many episodes it takes wins. The loser has to buy the winner a running related prize. So play with us, because if you for some reason beat us to 10 points, and you can let us know, yeah, you might be the one to get the prize, right? So we have our Mad Lib spinner thing that's going to assign us our categories. Here it goes. And no. That was almost the same categories as last time. I'm going to respin it because it asked us like the same thing that we just did last time. Okay. Categories are, the topic is cross country. The time period is the early 20th century, 1900s. And the focus area is fun and obscure facts.
Ooh.
Again, always with the fun and obscure facts.
I kind of dig that, because you don't necessarily have a leg up on that.
Oh, that's true. We showed that last time when neither of us got any points. That was a little bit unfortunate. But
Erin said she got one right. She got the cheese wheel right.
She did.
Yeah.
Erin, well done.
Yep.
Well done. So we are both at 2 points apiece at this moment. And now we're going to start playing our next round here as we get the AI ready.
While you're doing that, can I offer some information that Erin and I researched about the cheese wheels? Okay, so currently, this day and age, cheese wheels are like $70 to $450, depending on the cheese and the exact size of the cheese wheel.
Because it's a lot of cheese.
I was basing that on a certain poundage that looked like maybe it could satisfy that result. Anyway, that would be a really nice prize. I think that would be a really... I like food prizes.
If you can eat 70 pounds of cheese...
I mean, it lasts a long time, and you could...
10 pounds.
You could, like, share with friends. I just like food prizes, and I think that's a very generous gift.
Yeah, but who needs 10 pounds of cheese? All right. We are back with our AI trivia for our trivia segment, and our topic here this time is going to be cross country, the sport of cross country running, and the time period for the questions will be the early 20th century, and we would like you to focus on fun and obscure facts for, okay, again, the sport of cross country running, early 20th century, fun and obscure facts. That's the topic. Can you go ahead and ask us a question, the first question, and make sure you include 4 possible answers, one of them being correct?
Absolutely. Let's dive into some early 20th century cross-country trivia. Here's your first question. In the 1912 Olympics, which included a cross-country race, what unexpected obstacle did runners have to face on the course? Here are your options. 1, a field of angry sheep. 2, a sudden snowstorm in July. 3, intense heat and factory smoke. 4, a series of fences and hedges taller than the runners. Go ahead and make a guess.
I feel like this isn't real. Okay, do you have a guess? I have a guess.
What year did he say?
The 1912 Olympics. Cross country.
Okay, I got it.
What's your guess? Mm-hmm. Okay, guess in 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, you guessed one. Wait, what was that?
The sheep.
The sheep?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so one guess for sheep and one guess for factory smoke and whatever else was involved in that. What was the correct answer?
Well, those are both really fun guesses, but the correct answer is actually the intense heat and factory smoke.
Oh, you got it.
That's definitely a wild one to imagine. It was a pretty tough race with those conditions. All right. Glad you enjoyed that one. Let's move on to the next question whenever you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead. Give us another one.
All right, let's dive into another one. Here's your next fun fact question. In the early 1900s, some cross-country races in the US included a tradition where runners had to follow a trail of what unusual marker that was dropped along the course? Here are your options. 1, pieces of torn newspaper. 2, small wooden sticks with flags on them. 3, colored feathers left by race officials. 4, handfuls of flour scattered on the ground. Take your best guess.
Oh, that's so interesting. All right, I've got mine. Oh, I just said mine. What was yours?
4.
Okay.
So I was going to guess 2.
We're guessing handfuls of flour left along the course.
And you both got it right. It was indeed handfuls of flour. They used to scatter flour along the course so runners could follow the trail, which is definitely one of those charming old-school cross-country traditions.
The reason I thought about that one is because they use powder paint a lot of the time in cross-country races still to this day, because it doesn't like just blow away in the wind, but it also doesn't like stay there forever. It doesn't like stain things forever. And so I was like, I wonder if that was inspired by something historically. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, give us one more cross-country early 20th century fun facts question.
Absolutely, and that's a really cool bit of modern connection there. All right, here's one more for you. In some of the earliest cross-country events held in the 1900s, what did race organizers sometimes have runners do immediately before the start to ensure they wouldn't gain too much speed early on? Here are your options. 1, run a short loop backward. 2, drink a cup of hot tea. 3, jump over a small bonfire. 4, sing a verse of a song together. Go ahead. Okay, which one do you think it is?
I have a guess. Do you have a guess?
Yes.
3, 2, 1, go. Okay, sing a song.
Said 4.
We guessed 4. Sing a song.
Well, you both tuned in perfectly because that is absolutely correct. Some early cross-country races actually did have runners sing a verse of a song together before starting, just to keep things a little more lighthearted and to maybe keep them from going out too hard. So, well done, and great job with that guess.
Okay, that was I don't know. I'm gonna have to go double check.
Are you 3 for 3?
I did. I got 100%.
Man.
I know. I got 100% that time.
But I got 2.
You did. So the score now after 3 episodes here is Zach has 5, Andy has 4. It's a tight game. But I don't trust those questions.
It wasn't to make them not go out too fast, but I believe that they sang a verse of a song.
Maybe. Yeah.
I believe that
I am
part.
going to double check the AI. I think it might have been making some things up there, but we'll see. So there you go. You're running trivia for this week. Zach came away with a perfect score. That is rare, especially on things like fun and obscure facts. It was all mostly just guesswork. You got to understand. We're just guessing right. Andy scored 2 for 3. That's a great day.
Yeah.
That's a great day.
Yeah.
Well done. So with that, let's go ahead and continue on, but now with some real running facts, talking about latest updates from the world of running. First up, Andy's going to tell us how AtoZrunners did at Monumental Marathon.
It was so fun to be the spectator this time around. I've been spectating a lot in the last few years, but this one has probably topped my list. It was just so fun. We had CJ in an awesome marathon debut, looking super strong, and Jared running close to his PR from 13 years ago. So that was a really good showing for Jared too.
Yeah, good running all around. How about the other, like, just friends and people you were...
Yeah. It was really fun to see a lot of people there. There's a lot of people I missed.
Yeah.
Like that I've seen now via social media that you were there too.
Yeah.
But it was cool to see the group from Gazelle lead out there. Society, Track Club, a lot of those singlets around too. Yeah, so that was really cool. And then Alyssa McKinney, she deserves an extra special shout out for getting the Olympics trial standard. She's from our area. And then her teammate, Gabby, who I don't know personally yet, but she also qualified for the Olympic trials in a speedy time. I think they both were 2:34 and change, which is flying.
Very fast.
Yeah.
Very exciting stuff. So congrats to everybody who ran well. And it was a great day. It was a good day for running. All right, well, let's talk about a few things going on out on the news waves. Not a lot as far as like recent races in this weekend, but there's some other interesting things to share here. I wanted to actually start with a publication from Running Mag, from Canadian Running Magazine. They shared an article about recovery and overtraining, being tired versus overtraining, things like that. And it was an interesting article, an interesting study. They basically looked at these 24 runners. They had them after like a set period of time training at a certain level. They bump up their training significantly and just see what happens. And they're measuring a number of things. And what they found was that it was they were able to more or less predict who. And throughout they were doing these 3K time trials. And so about half the runners responded well to the training and their 3K time trial results improved, and about half of them, their 3K time trial results got worse as they were bumping up training. And so what they found is with those who worsened, the other things they noticed were their sleeping heart rate was increasing by about 3% on average after they started bumping up training. And so that's a sign of stress, physiological stress, because your resting heart rate should go down when you're gaining fitness. And when it's going up, it's usually some kind of internal system stress. And so 3% is not a lot, maybe 6 to 9 beats per minute, 6 to 10 beats per minute, depending on what your resting heart rate is. And so, and also not just like 1 day or 2 days or something, but like consistently over the course of several days, it was consistently higher. The heart rate variability dropped. And so your heart rate is not supposed to be super consistent. It's supposed to kind of go up and down and stuff like that when you're awake in particular. But when that variability starts to decrease and it gets like really mellow, oftentimes that can be a negative sign too. And then subjective motivation signs, all the stuff you'd expect. People saying things like they started dreading workouts, like not feeling motivated to run, especially on harder effort days, things like that. So really, those heart rate metrics can show other things too. And so it's not always a clear like, oh, you must be overtraining because these things are happening. They can mean a lot of different things. And so I found, like, as I was reading through the article, the big help there was that it's important to pay attention to those subjective measures, especially when you start to think like, I really don't want to go for this run right now. I really feel like I don't want to run hard. And when I have these hard effort days and like that kind of stuff. We need to pay attention to that because it means something. It doesn't always mean that it's an overtraining or anything like that. A lot of times it's not actually. A lot of times it's other kinds of stresses on our lives and our time. And it can be as simple as things like weather and stuff too. So you got to take that all into account. But the reality is it can be a sign that now's not the best day for me to run a hard effort or for me to cut the run a little bit shorter. I'm really dreading this run, but if I just cut it 20 minutes shorter, I feel a lot better about that. And all this stuff that's on my plate right now, I can, manage it a little better. So like, take into account your circumstances.
Yeah.
Interesting article. Okay. Some running things, some running results. Tunnel Hill, which is a trail event. They've got 100 mile, 50K, 50 mile, all that kind of stuff. It was also the U.S. 50 mile championships this year.
I think it is often.
Is it?
I think so.
I don't know much about that.
Aaron, let us know.
The Tunnel Hill race is known for being fast. The course there. It's not a mountain race. It's not like crazy elevation. And it's on like mostly these packed like paths as opposed to like single track trails or bushwhacking and stuff. And so it is often the site of records. Yeah. And this year was no exception, where 2 world records on the women's side were dropped. The first was the 100-mile record. Catriona Jennings of Ireland set a new world record for 100 miles. It's always subjective because
conditions make a big difference when you're running for hours.
And courses. There's only certain courses that are ever going to produce.
But Heron's record was also on that course.
Yes, as they have been for quite some time.
Yeah.
Tunnel Hill in particular. And so Camille Herron's record was broken by about 5 minutes by Jennings to run 12 hours, 37 minutes, and 4 seconds for 100 miles. Do the math. That's like 7 something.
Oh, wow.
7:30s, I think.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Snap.
Isn't that crazy?
What?
Ann Flower of the United States also set a new 50-mile world record at Tunnel Hill by running 5:18:57, which is 6:30-something pace for 50 miles straight.
That's nuts.
13 minutes better than the previous record.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know where Ann Flower is from? No.
United States?
United States?
Did I already say that? Oh, I didn't say that, but that was the U.S. 50-mile championships, and she is American, yes.
Okay.
Flower... Oh, go ahead.
Because Jennings was not.
Right.
That's why I clarified.
Yep, Jennings, Irish, Flower, American. Flower also, by the way, won Leadville 100 earlier this year in a course record time.
Okay.
She's on
the scene.
8 minutes faster than the previous Leadville course record.
Okay.
So she knows her stuff. But just to get a clear idea here, why courses matter so much. So Leadville is notorious for being a very difficult 100-mile course, whereas Tunnel Hill is like the easiest 100-mile course on the planet. Jennings set the world record here at Tunnel Hill in 12:37. Flower won Leadville in a course record running 17:58. So we're talking 5.5 hours slower.
Wow. Yeah, that's
and
massive.
That's still the fastest time anyone's run there. Right. So that gives you an idea of why the course matters so much.
Yeah. In ultra, that typically is the case. It's not always even accurate. I mean, it's not usually because they have to account for some amount of wiggle room.
Right. A course like Tunnel Hill is a little bit more accurate because it's not like trails and mountains, whereas courses like Leadville, it's not exactly 100 miles every time you run it. It's like 101, 102, or those kinds of things. Yes, that's kind of the way it goes. A handful of other interesting things going on include conversation is kind of starting to resurface about adding cross country to the Winter Olympics.
Let's go.
Right? Did you know in order for an event to be considered for the Winter Olympics, it has to be competed on ice or snow?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah.
I was not aware. So I guess that would make it a little tricky.
That's why they hold Winter Olympics in areas that aren't always snowy, that time of year, which is just never a smart idea. So they spend tons and tons of money creating fake snow for all of the events.
Well, this will take a lot of snow.
They have to, right? They have to, because it can't be Winter Olympics if you're not doing it on snow or ice. It's in the Olympic charter.
Well, so yeah, this brings about all kinds of questions. Like, then our U.S. races for like our U.S. championship cross country race, that should probably be in snow.
Only if it's a winter event or if it's an Olympic event.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, here's the thing.
If it becomes that.
Seb Coe talked about it once, and he's what is his role? I don't even remember his role. He's the president of something, maybe World Athletics or something.
Yes.
World
IOC.
Athletics. No. He's the president of the IOC, right? The chairman for the International Olympic Committee, I think. Anyway, he said that probably they would look at changing the charter if that was the case, not trying to just run cross country on snow the whole time, but just have it be something that doesn't have to be on snow. Okay, who knows?
Snow around.
So, do you remember the name Canadian runner Charles Philippe Thibodeau?
Now that you say it like that, yeah.
Yeah, because I always say it like that. CBT. He has participated in a number of world championships as recently as this past September in Tokyo. He ran his first ever marathon in New York City this year, which was only like 7 weeks after he ran the 1500 in the Tokyo World Championships, and then promptly announced retirement. And that's kind of perplexing to me, because like he's at the height of his career, it seems. Like he just set a Canadian record this year on the roads, maybe 2 of them actually. Won multiple Canadian championship things this year, competed in the World Championships. Why suddenly retire? It's kind of.
I mean, there could be other stresses in his life. You know nothing about a family member with illness.
It could be.
He himself could have an illness. Who knows?
Yeah, but that's it. He apparently he needed to run in his own mind or otherwise, I don't know. But he needed to run 1 marathon before officially retiring from professional running. So 7 weeks after the World Championships, he ran the New York City Marathon. He said it was awful, and then
when you're not trained for it specifically, it can be pretty awful.
Yep, indeed. All right, lastly, did you hear about Cape Town Marathon?
I did. I heard about it.
Yeah, so they canceled that race.
Yeah.
Under 90 minutes before the start.
So disappointing.
Tens of thousands of people. And the reason why was because of wind. It was pretty windy. They thought it was dangerous.
Yeah, I did hear that was like very dangerous winds.
Apparently that's a normal thing for Cape Town. But there's a lot of skepticism around that. But that's not the point of what we're talking about right here. I teased this at the beginning. So they said as a result of canceling last second for all these runners who paid all that money to fly to Cape Town and the southernmost end of Africa, they said, okay, you can run the race again in the next 2 years. You choose. And so it doesn't have to be next year. You could be in 2 years. Okay, fine. But also, they will give a provisional World Marathon Major star to anyone who was registered for the race that got canceled.
Oh, I see.
Remember, they're not part of the Marathon Majors, but they are a current candidate. There are 2 other marathons that are current candidates. Abbott has announced that they're expanding to 9 races in the Marathon Majors eventually. And Cape Town is the next one on the docket. But it's not a guarantee that it'll happen. And this, by the way, doesn't bode well for them canceling like this. But here's the thing. You don't have to run the race to get that star. If they become a majors and you were signed up for the canceled race, they're saying you're going to get the star. So that doesn't really make sense. The point of the star is if you have finished all the majors, you get all the stars. But people will essentially have the Cape Town star.
It's because people are so mad because they're like, I'm not going to make a trip to Africa again.
Right, but that doesn't help them at all. Giving them a star for a race they did not do doesn't solve the problem of, I spent all that money to go run that race.
That's why, though. It's because people are upset because they're like, this was a once-in-a-lifetime trip. I made the trip, and then you canceled it. Yeah. I mean, it's expensive.
True. Weird situation.
Debacles.
Moral of the story, don't cancel races because of strong winds. Or better yet, be more prepared for strong winds. But why was it dangerous? Why is strong wind dangerous for a marathon?
Oh, you could ask them.
Well, they said because like some of their race stuff, like their start line and stuff, like things were blowing over and things like that. And it's like, yeah, but you're Cape Town. You know it's going to be windy because it's always windy in Cape Town.
Wow.
So I found that to be...
I think people... Yeah. I wasn't there. I don't know all the details.
Of course not. We really don't know. But either way, I don't think that makes sense for the constellation.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go. Now you know why it's possible to get a World Marathon Major star without
I didn't know
finishing
where
a
you were
race.
going with that. So
Yeah.
now I know.
Now you know.
Curiosity is satiated.
Okay.
But we have more coming at you. So stay tuned for more of our 7th season of the A to Z Running podcast. Feel free to shoot us your questions, how you're doing in the trivia. We love to communicate with you. It's one of our favorite things. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.